Welcome to Voice Daily Finance, the most important news personalized for you every day. Supported by Voice.com.
After listening to today's news, you'll know, first, Canada's new oil pipeline deal sparks political crisis as minister resigns, threatening to derail its pivot from US markets. So we'll discuss why this political infighting creates a major risk for foreign investors and what it means for the Canadian dollar's volatility. Second, India slashes 29 labour laws to just 4, a radical overhaul to lure China +1 investment amid fierce union backlash. We'll explore how this high-stakes gamble to boost manufacturing could either ignite growth or suppress wages and weaken domestic demand. Third, a 50% cash premium grips Gaza as a banknote crisis forces a pivot to digital wallets amid economic collapse. Today we'll take a closer look at this digital aid trap and its implications for humanitarian finance and financial statecraft. A blockbuster energy deal in Canada just triggered a political bombshell. Mere hours after Prime Minister Mark Carney announced a historic agreement with Alberta for a new oil pipeline, a prominent cabinet minister resigned in protest. Now, this accord is more than just one project. It's a major policy signal to the world. For years, capital investment in Canada's energy sector has been declining, falling from a peak of 118 billion Canadian dollars in 2014. Essentially, this new deal is designed to reverse that trend and attract fresh private capital back into Canadian energy. The hope is that this could be a major boost for the entire Canadian economy. However, as we're about to see, the intense political opposition creates a huge risk for any investor betting on this project. The deal itself is a tectonic shift. It opens the door for a pipeline to the Pacific, a long-sought prize for Canada's oil heartland designed to pivot exports toward Asia. The goal is to break the country's dependence on the United States, which currently buys over 90% of Canadian crude oil, a vulnerability highlighted by tariffs from US President Donald Trump. And get this dependence has a real, measurable cost. Canadian heavy crude, known as Western Canada Select or WCS, has historically been sold at a significant discount to the American benchmark, West Texas Intermediate or WTI. This price gap exists largely because of limited pipeline capacity, which effectively traps Canadian oil in the US market. By building a pipeline to Asia, Canada can create more competition for its oil. The strategic endgame is that this could narrow that price gap, potentially adding billions in revenue for Canadian producers and the government. This is a physical manifestation of Canada's strategy to de-risk its economy from US trade policy, but the political fallout was immediate and severe. British Columbia's Premier, David Eby, who was not included in the discussions, blasted the project, warning it could become an energy vampire that saps resources from other initiatives. The opposition then moved from provincial to federal. What really brought this to a head was the next development. Culture Minister Stephen Guilbeault, a famed environmentalist and former Greenpeace activist, quit the cabinet, declaring the deal a betrayal. He stated his belief that climate action plans he once championed have been or are about to be dismantled. The resignation of a key minister, combined with fierce provincial opposition, serves as a powerful litmus test for Canada's ability to get any large-scale project done. This signals to global markets that the political capital for major infrastructure is critically low. This kind of instability could have a chilling effect on foreign direct investment, not just in energy, but across other sectors as well. To get the deal done, Carney's government made massive concessions, including exempting the pipeline from a tanker ban off British Columbia's coast and suspending a federal oil and gas emissions cap, a significant reversal of previous policy. But that's not the whole picture. The project faces another wall of opposition. A group representing coastal First Nations delivered a blunt and powerful statement declaring that an oil pipeline to the province's northern coast will never happen. This isn't just an infrastructure project. It's now a high-stakes showdown pitting national economic strategy against environmental policy, federal power against provincial rights, and the government against a unified front of Indigenous opposition. So the real question is how this political drama affects the markets. Specifically, watch the Canadian dollar. While the loonie has traditionally moved with oil prices, this pipeline battle could become a new independent driver of its value. Positive news, suggesting the project is moving forward, could strengthen the Canadian dollar against the US dollar. Conversely, setbacks and rising opposition could cause it to fall, regardless of what oil prices are doing. For investors, this adds a new layer of volatility to Canadian energy stocks and the currency itself. All market-related information is subject to change. Speaking of high-stakes economic strategies, India just executed one of its most radical overhauls in decades, consolidating 29 federal labour laws into just 4 simplified codes. The sheer scale is staggering. The number of rules businesses must follow has plummeted from 1,400 down to 350. Businesses and investors are calling it a landmark moment. This is a big deal because for years, many international companies have pursued a China-centric supply chain strategy. Now, to diversify risks, they are actively seeking a China plus one, a second major production base. India sees this as its golden opportunity to capture that shift. And it seems this isn't just talk, the money is already flowing. Recent data shows that foreign direct investment into India's manufacturing sector has surged, reaching $165.1 billion over the past decade, a 69% increase. This is a powerful vote of confidence from global investors betting on India's future. The situation presents a fascinating duality though. On one side, a major boon for business, while on the other, a firestorm is brewing. Trade unions are demanding a full rollback, calling the changes the most sweeping and aggressive abrogation of workers' hard-won rights and entitlements since independence. Protests are already underway. So what's at the heart of this collision? 2 explosive changes. First, the new rules make it far easier for companies to fire workers. The threshold for companies that can lay off employees without government permission has been tripled, jumping from firms with 100 workers to 300. Here's where it gets interesting. This change directly targets a huge structural problem in India's economy known as the missing middle. For decades, the vast majority of Indian factories have been either very small, with fewer than 50 employees, or very large. There are very few mid-sized firms. Why? Because the old laws made it so difficult and risky to manage a workforce of over 100 people that many owners deliberately kept their businesses small to avoid the regulations. And, without these medium and large factories, it's impossible to achieve the economies of scale needed to boost productivity and compete on the world stage with manufacturing powerhouses like Vietnam, Bangladesh, and China. This reform is a major gamble that by removing this barrier, India can finally build a stronger industrial base. One factory worker told the BBC, the laws will benefit only the employers and not workers like us. Second, the power of unions takes a direct hit. Workers must now give a 14-day notice before any strike, a rule that previously only applied to state-run companies. The debate is raging among top economists. One side, including former government think tank chairman Arvind Panagaria, argues the old rules were draconian and that a flexible labour market is essential for India to compete with China. But other economists warn that the real issue holding back investment is low wages and weak demand, not restrictive laws. This decision brings both potential benefits and comes with inherent risks. After all, while flexible labour markets can attract investment, they can also put downward pressure on wages in the short term. If workers have less bargaining power and fear being laid off more easily, they are less likely to demand higher pay. This could create a dangerous cycle where lower wages lead to weaker consumer spending, hurting the very domestic demand businesses need to grow. In fact, some analysts like India Ratings are already forecasting a tapering of real wage growth in the near future. The old system was undeniably broken, with one expert noting you couldn't implement all of India's old labour laws without violating 20% of them. Now, the nation is in the middle of a high-stakes economic experiment. So the critical indicator to watch will be India's manufacturing capacity utilisation. The latest data from the Reserve Bank of India shows it's around 72.5%, which is still below the long-term average. If these reforms are truly successful, we should see that number climb steadily. If it stays flat, it will be a strong signal that weak consumer demand is a bigger problem than restrictive labour laws. This reform is betting these changes will ignite its manufacturing sector, while unions warn it's a direct assault on the rights of millions, setting the stage for a defining battle over the future of the Indian economy. We've been talking about massive national economic shifts, but let's pivot to a place where the economy has all but collapsed, forcing a desperate turn to digital survival. Let's start with a single statistic that might just change your entire perspective on this situation. In Gaza, to get your own physical cash, you have to pay a 50% commission to an informal merchant. That's the surreal reality right now. This commission, known in economics as a cash premium, is a real-time indicator of extreme economic stress, often more accurate than official data. To put that in context, Argentina has a famous unofficial exchange rate called the blue dollar. When the gap between the official rate and the blue dollar rate widens, it signals a loss of confidence in the economy. In Gaza, a 50% premium reveals a level of financial desperation that is simply off the charts. This all follows the destruction of the region's banking infrastructure. With most banks destroyed, ATMs non-existent, and an estimated $180 million in cash stolen from bank vaults, the economy has been pushed to the brink. However, if you zoom out, you'll see another layer at play. This isn't just a random consequence of chaos. It's also a result of what experts call financial statecraft. Israel's policy of blocking physical cash transfers is a tactical financial tool used to disrupt an adversary. The severe economic collapse for civilians is the significant collateral damage. It's a stark, real-world case study of how finance can be weaponized with implications for understanding the humanitarian consequences of financial sanctions elsewhere. So how does this actually grind everything to a halt? In economics, we talk about the velocity of money, the speed at which currency is used. When there's no physical cash, the velocity of money collapses. Transactions stop. The economy freezes. And believe it or not, counterintuitively, Palestinian banks are actually overflowing with Israeli shekels that they can't deposit back into Israeli banks. This creates a liquidity trap, strangling the financial system from a different angle. A new UN report states Gaza's entire population of over 2 million has been pushed into poverty, with 4 out of 5 people now unemployed. The result? A desperate, surreal new industry has emerged. Banknote repairmen. Men like Bara Abu al-Aoun now sit at roadside tables, painstakingly fixing torn and tattered currency with just a ruler, pencils, and glue. In a cash-starved economy, every single note, no matter how damaged, has become critical for survival. This is where the situation takes a more complex turn. The crisis has triggered hyperinflation for basic goods. UNICEF officials have witnessed families paying $80 for 2 kilograms of tomatoes and $70 for 5 kilograms of onions. In response, a digital revolution is accelerating out of necessity. The Bank of Palestine reports over 500,000 users have adopted its e-wallet service, allowing for transactions using simple text messages. Interestingly enough, this crisis-driven adoption of e-wallets is creating a highly traceable microeconomy by default. This offers a preview of the debates we are having globally about central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, but here it's happening in an extremely fragile post-conflict context. Humanitarian agencies are now using these wallets to send aid directly to families. But this exposes a critical flaw that experts are calling the digital aid trap. The core problem is this: recipients get the digital funds, but they can't actually use them effectively because the physical supply chain has collapsed. Money in an e-wallet is useless if there are no goods to buy. For instance, the World Food Programme recently reported running completely out of food supplies in Gaza because border crossings were shut for weeks. This is a critical lesson for future disaster relief planning. Digital aid must be paired with a functioning supply chain. The crisis has pushed the economy into uncharted territory, creating a stark contrast between high-tech digital solutions and the medieval-like practice of hand-repairing currency. As one resident trying to survive put it, in Gaza, we're just surviving. We're not human beings anymore.
That's it for today on Voice Daily Finance. Follow, share, and stay tuned for daily updates coming your way tomorrow.